Welcome to TravelPreneur. I'm your host, Megan McSwain. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Amaan Dosani, CEO of Hifive, a contactless app that uses QR codes to accept tips electronically and conveniently tracks employee performance through customer ratings and reviews. Formerly known as TipX, which Amaan co-founded and received the Spring 2022 Startup Grant for, Hifive is a major player in the hospitality sector. Hello, Amaan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Meghna. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
For sure. So let's dive into Hifive. Now, I know we want to clarify Hifive was TipX, right? That's probably what we
That's
want to get
correct.
off. Okay.
That is correct. Tip X was originally that transitioned over to Hifive at the beginning of this year.
Okay. So when we go back and forth with our questions and talking about it, in case we mention one or the other, it's the same concept company, but it's just changed names and maybe rebranded, I guess.
Correct. It's kind of
Okay.
evolved. We always say that Tip X was the original idea and evolved over to Hifive.
Okay. So we don't want anyone to get confused. So I wanted to clear that up right away. Let's talk about the inception of TipX and what kind of interested you in this domain and just the foundational idea behind it.
Yeah, so it all goes back to the beginning of the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, my family decided to open and build our first hotel here in College Station. It was 3 months before the pandemic that we actually opened our doors. And as the pandemic got to its peak, we lost our entire management team, our staff, and was left with me, my mother, my father, and sister to run this 91 room hotel with no experience. It happened overnight to where, my father, my mother, and I didn't even know how to check somebody in. My sister was the only person that was qualified to run the desk. The rest of us had no experience whatsoever. I'm sure I have the assumption how, chaotic it was at the time, but it gave me the opportunity to come in and have to be forced to learn the industry and learn hospitality, right? From checking rooms to cleaning beds to running a whole operation with, again, not even knowing how to check a guest in. Because as you know, in business, when something happens, your life doesn't stop for the business keeps going. And so we had to
Right.
adapt and learn. And as I was, basically putting out all the fires so that our business could operate, I came to an idea where, from an example, that a guest came down to me and actually gave me an envelope while I was running the desk. And I said, "Well, what is this?" And she said, "Well, it's tip." And I said, "Well, who's it for?" And she was like, "It's for a housekeeper." And I was like, "Oh, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much for giving this to me. I'll make sure I get it to the housekeeper that cleans your room." And she said, "But how do I know you're actually going to give it to her? How do I know that you're not just going to keep it?" And so when she said that, I kind of had that light bulb where, how many people are having that idea that they want to show appreciation for an employee or anyone on the property and don't have that ability to feel comfortable enough that they know that those funds are going to get there. And so when she told me that, I told her, "Well, ma'am, this is my family business. This is the highest reward an employee could receive. And me as an operator, that shows that my housekeeper is exceeding her expectations and making sure that a guest is having a great stay in a clean room. And so this is
Right.
all positive for me." I assured her that employee was going to get that tip. And so as I started realizing, how many people were having that problem, I was also faced with the ability to, how do I incentivize my own employees to feel encouraged in the workspace? Because as you know, in the pandemic, hiring employees, even till
Yeah.
today,
It's
is one of
still
the
hard. Yeah.
biggest problems. Turnover is so high. And so I'm trying to find certain ways to be able to come up with a successful that way that could help me as an operator, but also help my employees at the same time. And that's where TipX kind of came to its own. I had reached out to my co-founder, who's also my older cousin, and said, "Hey, this is the problem that I saw. Let's try to come up with something." So we originally started with Venmo and Cash App to try to prove out our
Hmm.
idea that, are people willing to leave digital tips? When
Right.
we left it out for the first time, we actually didn't see a success. We saw a few, but not to a point where it could be scalable or successful. And we realized that, people don't want to download an app to kind of send tips, or they don't need to have their phone number, email information that makes
Right.
it for the person to send the monetary funds. So we tried different ideas like Squarespace. Again, the process wasn't as great. And then we finally transitioned over to Shopify, where we were able to then validate our idea that this was working. And so we went on to Shopify. It was a way of a quick checkout using Apple Pay, using Google Pay, and we were done. The guest was able to not share any information. They're able to use their digital wallet. And that is how we created our MVP, was just trying to find a way to solve this issue at my hotel. That way I could be like, as a hotel owner and operator, I'm able to do this. This is what I solved, and go out and try to help others in the industry as well.
This episode is brought to you by TravelPayments.com. Travel businesses have unique needs when it comes to credit card processing. From large average ticket sizes and tolerance for higher chargeback ratios to simple integrations with the most popular shopping cart systems, the travel industry specialists at TravelPayments.com have you covered. Unfortunately, many of the most popular credit card processors initially accept travel businesses, but without warning, freeze their merchant accounts and the thousands of dollars in them because these service providers don't understand or support the unique needs of travel industry business. Don't get stuck with one of the big guys who will freeze you out without a moment's notice. Instead, work with the travel industry specialists who will support your business every step of the way. Visit TravelPayments.com to get a free quote today.
So what sets it apart as far as, it's hard to say because, this was back in 2020 and look at how much life has happened in these last 3 years. There are probably other people doing the same thing, but what sets apart, or what was your goal for TipX to be different than other apps maybe doing a similar thing?
Yeah, so originally, we were focused on creating the platform for individual employees. Our initial idea was that let's capture reviews to help employees build their own resumes where they could have this type of reviews to take and actually provide themselves an advantage in the market when they're trying to be recruited by other hotels or other industries that they have credibility from guests. But what we've seen is when we started implementing and started seeing the growth of our business, we recognized that guests were using our platform to share their opinions about their in-house experiences.
So like, for example, they can leave gratuity, but they can also leave a review or a comment about that person.
Correct. Okay. That was our original theory. But what we've seen is that comment section, people have been really focused on writing reviews about their in-house stay. So amenities, guest experience, whether they had a good, stay, the bed wasn't comfortable, the pillows weren't comfortable. And we're able to now identify which room is having that issue. So if a shower drain is broken or, the TV doesn't work, our platform is able to identify that specific room and let the management know, hey, this is what issue this guest is having, and helping them identify it ahead of time before it goes to their post-stay reviews, which is Google's TripAdvisor, where the guest then shares it and it affects the franchise fees, it affects the scores, and it also gives a bad impact on the hotel itself.
And did you face any challenges as far as bringing this idea to obviously you wanted to use it for your family business and figured out pretty quickly that it was working, but bringing it to other people, this idea, did you face any challenges where people were like, because there's a lot of old school people and they don't want to change the way they do things, specifically when it comes to paying tips in cash and giving them directly to the person and all of that stuff. And they don't want to sort of move forward with the times. So were there any challenges that you faced when you brought that into the market?
We did, preliminary we did, because challenge at the beginning was trying to educate the customer, what our platform was and what was meaning behind our platform. It wasn't, we're going to keep the tips and then not give it back, right? It's that trust funds. And so creating a more seamless and more transparent way of how funds were being transferred from us to the business, how, each tip was being documented. And so giving that clarity and understanding was where we needed to really focus on when we were talking to our preliminary customers. It wasn't much the idea, but how was the money being transferred and how was us getting notified? So one of the challenges what we were facing is like, how do we notify the hotel or the employee that they got a tip? And then how do we notify the guest that it's been received to our funds and it actually got to the employee? And so we, at the beginning, had to manually do this. We created a dashboard, which was actually Google Sheets for the business. So anytime we received a tip, we would go in and manually enter it into the Google Sheets that we shared with the business. So anytime the business was able to log in or check their Google Sheets, they'd see those lists of tips. And then when they see the day of payroll, they're able to make it equal, and it would show that transparency. And then the employee would have their own Google Sheets where they're able to see what
Wow.
tips they received as well. So that now all three parties know how much that each person got and, what was the total amount of tips.
Wow. Hearing that sounds very complicated or like there's a lot of steps, but I could see how in the long run it's easier for the customer to get that money. Do you have any success stories that you can share of someone that maybe was thinking this is not going to work,
Yeah.
and then they kind of move forward with it?
One of our proudest moments was whenever we actually implemented with a valet in Austin. We had the opportunity to collaborate with a valet company in Austin where they were able to have multiple locations around the city. One of the best locations that they had was in a medical center in Austin. It was a complimentary valet. And so we thought, let's go ahead and put a large sidewalk sign to where when people are waiting for their car, they can scan this QR code and they can leave a tip. A lot of people were skeptical first because when we spoke the valet team, which had like 30 to 40 of their employees, and only
Hmm.
5 to 10 signed up. A lot of them were very suspicious about what we were doing, but I said, hey, look, just give us a try. Let's see how it goes. So out of those 5 to 10, only 2 employees actually gave us their photos because we allow them to optionally add their photo if they choose to with their consent. So 2 of them did. And when they did that and we started the first day, you could see the influx of tips, but for the individuals that had their photo.
Because it lets the customer know that this is the person the money is going to. Like it's like a double confirmation.
Correct. And so after that, our emails are just popping up. People are asking to get signed up. They're asking to add their
Wow.
photos. We're getting text messages. So like as soon as we proved it with 2 employees, we were able to bring on the rest of the staff. And that's what we tell
Wow.
a lot of our customers. Look, just put it out there. It's all optional. It's just an ability for them to participate. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But what we've seen is once 1 or 2 participate, they see the value that we're bringing, then you have the ability to go ahead and sign up yourself, and you can just see that increase every time we bring on a new property or new business. But this
Wow.
success story is so personal because my co-founder and I went and like watched the tips happen.
Mhm.
We sat like the valet, we sat in the back and just watched it happen. We went and talked to the employees, what was working, what wasn't working. So they knew us by face and they were always excited to see us. And out of all that, the best day ever was our first $100 tip, because that first $100 tip really justified that there is a chance that somebody will do that at the valet. And the
Right.
review is what was even more impactful. The review was written that she was in a wheelchair. The valet driver took the wheelchair, opened it up for her, got her in her wheelchair, and walked her to her appointment. And
Wow.
as an owner, how do you know that your valet is stepping out of the way to do that? Out of just
Right.
good manner, good etiquette. And
Right.
what he did was he captured, because his client is the hospital. So what he did was he took all the reviews that were written from our platform and he presented it to the hospital to show, hey, this is what your guests or your customers are saying about our valet service. So it's giving him an opportunity to justify his business as well and why
For
they should
sure.
their relationship.
That's
That's
amazing.
kind of how we evolved, realizing how much more value we can provide as just a tipping platform at the time.
Right. So since then, beyond companies like valets, how has High Five integrated with, I guess, the travel sector? Obviously, hotels. In what other ways has it become kind of more integrated?
Yeah, we actually have gotten a lot of interest from traveling companies. So, people like one of our recent clients is actually out of Alaska. They do Alaska tour companies. So they
Hmm.
have about 4 or 5 boats. They have 2 drivers that bring them to the boats. So they implemented us for their drivers and
Okay.
for those using the boats. We've had interest from whitewater rafting companies. We've had interest from bicycle companies. So I don't know if you're
Okay.
a bicycle valet.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's interest there as well. We are always looking for the ability to find markets that may offer tipping at cash, but don't have the point of sale system. So we're trying to come in and say, hey, let's not put in this whole system. Let's just stamp a QR code and we can do the rest on the back end.
What about something like, because I'm starting to think all the times we tip, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Especially these days, it's just more and more. But what about like cruise ships or because I mean,
Yeah,
there's so many people when you're traveling or on vacation that you encounter that you want to offer your gratuity.
most definitely. Cruise ships, airlines, they have the speed boats that people give, even on the beach,
Like
whenever
excursions and things.
excursions.
Yeah.
I mean, our market can really evolve and adapt as a product, but our focus right now is in hospitality because, as I mentioned before, it was more educating the customer. Now that 2 years later, the customer is educated, it's really about creating those relationships and developing those and continuing to grow in hospitality, then going out and growing. Because my background is in hospitality, I've been in operations, I understand the market, and I think that also creates a huge value when presenting this to other hoteliers is that I was in your shoes, I am in your shoes. This is what I did to solve those issues that I was having.
It's funny that you say that because it just makes me wonder. You were in the business, your family business of the hotel, but to take from going from that to building this sort of new system of tipping is quite a jump. So did you always have this entrepreneurial spirit? Was it something that you thought would happen, or it just kind of unfolded the way it did because of COVID?
I've always wanted to create something. I considered myself a very creative person. I always had certain ideas. My co-founder and I, this was actually our third idea. Our first two ideas technically failed, didn't even get to market because
Okay.
we just realized it just wasn't at cost and there was no success behind it. We were just going to raise money and like not make any money. Let's just put it on the back burner. And then in the middle of the pandemic, when all that happened, it was just that light bulb and one phone call. And all we did was start with a Google document. We met at a Starbucks. We put Project X and we just started writing and documenting everything about tipping. We had like 64 pages of notes of just the
Wow.
tipping, contactless, just whatever came up to mind. We put it in that document and we just grew from there.
Can you share any challenges that you had as far as like, okay, wow, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how to do this. So who do I ask? Or, where do I go from here? Because that happens a lot when you have this great idea and you don't know how to get from A to B sometimes.
Yes, and it goes back to having a co-founder because I was always thinking, we need to put money in and build this product and build this product, but he said, let's take a step back and say, okay, how do we validate it? One, and two, it's like, how do we create that process that we are imagining at the most cost efficient way? And so at first it was we could have two options. One, we spend money on building a MVP, or two, we use Google Docs and we use Shopify and we just run with it. And we see if people are willing to pay for it. What's crazy is option two worked. And
Right.
that's what the challenge was, is like, okay, we're going to go with the harder challenge. It's going to be manual, but are we able to successfully roll this out and be in some, implement in some hotels and let it run? And that's exactly what happened. The challenge was just maintaining it because as I was building the product, not only I was still operating the business, I was also in school. So I had like a
Wow.
lot of things on my plate and I was in school building this and operating. So, but building this was a priority because any tip that came in, I needed to make sure I was able to post it or put it on the Google
Right.
Sheet. I'm creating that experience for my customer. Juggling all those hats was the challenge, was how do I make time to do everything, or how do I sacrifice certain things
Right. I'm sure
to
you
make
did. Yeah.
business
With
work?
wearing so many hats. I'm asking you, what is your advice for young entrepreneurs? But you're a young entrepreneur, but someone getting into this or someone wanting to kind of, because look at this, it all happened in 3 years. I mean, just a few years ago, QR codes were not as commonplace as they are now. But during COVID, when you had to scan the QR code to see a menu at a restaurant, now it's just something that is so mainstream for really everybody. So things can happen really fast. What advice would you give to someone who kind of wants to enter this sort of industry with something really cutting edge and modern and something that would help a customer, like a sort of a problem solving
Yeah, the advice I would give is one, write down all of your ideas because there's never a bad idea. You just need to
Right.
write down all your ideas, pick your top three, and try to go and validate it. Plus, ask questions. If you know others in the industry, ask them broad questions. Don't ask them skewed questions. Like, don't try to find the right answer with them. Have the answer naturally come to you. So if you have this idea, then you want to make sure you don't want to say like, I didn't want to say, are you having trouble getting digital tips, right? It's like making them give you the right answer. Rather
Right.
asking, how are you getting tips today? Or what is the percentage of people that leave cash tips at your hotel? Trying to find those question answers within different questions and not make it skewed. Plus, if you're a college student at the time, there's a lot of resources that universities offer you and a lot of free money
Definitely.
that you can receive from just applying. And third, again, if you're a student, go and talk to your professors. I always elaborate a lot on that because my success was I would tell my professors, I'm building this company, I'm running my family business, I'm going to school. When I let it out on the table, if I had to walk out of class because I had a client meeting or if I had to take care of some of the business, there was no questions asked because they
Right.
know that if I'm gonna walk out of class, it's something very important for me to walk out of class. And
Right.
developing that relationship then led to intros, then led to even more mentors. So it's like really starting from square one. So if you're a young entrepreneur, you're focused on wanting to do this, start with the resources that you have. And so if you're in school, really hone in on those because I promise you there's one hotelier that goes to your school. I guarantee you it.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
just need
There's a
to
lot of resources in university for sure. Yeah.
and to really use your resource. And that's how we built from the ground up was using all of UT's resources. Like you mentioned, that one grant, there are about 7, 8 more that we applied to. We got about
Mhm.
5 out of the 7. That led us to where we were and being accepted. And our biggest milestone again was getting into Techstars, which is one of the biggest accelerators in the country. And getting all the way experienced enough to where we were accepted into that was a huge win for our company. And that's kind of
Wow.
how we even evolved it more. So it's really just using all the free resources you get, especially
Hmm.
if you're in the position that I was in.
Do you, as it is today, the company, do you have any service providers or software that is crucial to the company or something that you could recommend that other people in this industry could benefit from using?
Not particularly, I really believe that all the platforms that are out there today has been very successful. There's nothing in
Hmm.
hospitality because right now a lot of the brands are coming in and adding their own brand standards and adding
Hmm.
their own preferred vendors. There's a lot of processes coming, but I just really believe it goes down and especially in hospitality is the team that you're building, making sure you create a great team from the bottom up because your hotel in particular isn't going to be successful if you don't have a great housekeeping team. They're the ones that are going to clean your rooms. They're the ones that are going to start your entire business. And without them and them not being appreciated and really honing
Right.
in on the idea that they matter, everything else will not be successful. So
Right. At
I,
the end of the day, it's a people
yeah,
business.
correct. And I don't think a
Right.
software, in my opinion, can always overtake an employee's heart at a will
Right.
to want to be able to participate or work in an environment as hospitality. There's a lot of platforms that can go and enhance that and help that, but it all
Right.
goes down to square one is building your team.
So what do you have planned? I mean, it's been what now 2 years since the company started. It's had its rebrand. It's called High Five. What does the future hold for High Five?
We are just focused on growing our company and expanding as far as we can. We've had interest from other countries and continents, but
Hmm.
our main focus has been here in the United States, developing
Hmm.
our relationship, improving our product every day, and making sure that our current customers are happy and excited about what we're building. We really believe that our story is what creates the foundation of our business, and our story is what got us where we are today. And we just want to continue growing and evolving, and that goes with our clients as well, making sure that we have a great relationship. And if you see our website, it's high5community.com. So it's really focused on creating community that's focused on gratuity, but also at the same time improving the overall wellness of an employee in hospitality.
Right. And the experience for the customer. So, well, that leads me to go ahead and let people know where they can keep up with everything that's going on with High Five, high5community.com. What about social media? How can they keep
Yeah,
up and see
High
what?
Five on LinkedIn. We're very
Okay.
active on LinkedIn and always
Hmm.
sharing all information that we can. And so if anyone is interested, they're welcome to go on our website or find us on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much, Amaan. This was so wonderful getting to just kind of hear about your journey. And I mean, what a success story, really. We look forward to speaking with you again here at TravelPreneur and just kind of seeing what's new with Hifive in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much, Magna, for the opportunity. And I really appreciate it and look forward to staying connected.
For sure. Take care.